The matchmaker's scroll lands softly on your father's table, but to you it sounds like a death sentence wrapped in silk, because you are only 14 years old in the Sengoku period, and somewhere beyond the mountains, a man you have never seen has already purchased your entire future for 300 koku of rice and a military alliance, meaning your body, your choices, your very life have been traded without your voice ever being heard. Your mother says nothing as she places a small cake and dagger into your hands, light enough to hide within your sleeve, and calmly shows you exactly where to cut your own throat if enemy soldiers ever breach the walls, whispering that you will have only 3 seconds to choose between honor and a fate worse than death. And just like that, without ceremony or comfort, you are welcomed into womanhood as the future wife of a samurai. You were born in 1528 into a minor samurai family as the third daughter of a man who needed sons. A man who looked at you once before returning to his war maps. But your mother understood your worth immediately, not as a child, but as a living bargaining piece. And by the age of 5, your training begins as you are taught to kneel in cold water until your legs tremble and burn, to pour tea so precisely that not a single ripple forms, to arrange flowers as if your life depends on it, because it truly does. Since a clumsy wife shames her husband, and a shamed samurai loses honor, and his honor determines your survival. Yet beyond these quiet disciplines lies a truth. No etiquette scroll will tell you, because alongside grace you are handed a naginata, a long curved blade meant for women left behind to defend empty castles while their husbands chase glory elsewhere. And your arms shake under its weight as your instructor, a widow with hollow eyes, strikes you again and again without mercy, reminding you that an enemy will never care about your exhaustion. Your only comfort is Yuki, the daughter of your father's retainer, and together you train in secret after dark, laughing at your mistakes and daring to dream of impossible futures. She of marrying a poet and you of finding kindness? Though deep inside you both understand such dreams do not belong to girls like you. At 13, your transformation begins as your eyebrows are shaved and redrawn, high upon your forehead, marking you as ready for marriage. And soon your teeth are blackened through the ritual of ohaguro until your reflection in the bronze mirror becomes unrecognizable. The child you once were erased and replaced by something crafted, something prepared, something meant to be given away. When the formal meeting arrives, it lasts no longer than a single cup of tea, and the man who will become your husband, Takanoshi, 28 years old and marked by war, studies you not as a person, but as an investment, judging your health, your body, your usefulness, and with a single nod, the arrangement is sealed, because no one asked for your opinion, and in this world, you were never meant to have one. Your wedding procession stretches for half a mile, a slow-moving display of wealth and expectation, servants carrying lacquered chests filled with silk kimonos, household goods, and the naginata your mother insisted you bring, calling it a symbol of duty, though you understand the truth. It is a quiet reminder that one day you may be forced to kill, perhaps to defend a home that will never truly be yours, as the palanquin carries you forward toward a castle filled with strangers who will measure your worth with every glance and every breath. Your new home greets you with the scent of old incense and unspoken suspicion, and your mother-in-law, Lady Taka, studies you with cold precision, as if inspecting a flawed purchase, murmuring aloud that you are too thin, your shoulders too narrow, questioning whether you will even be capable of bearing sons, while you stand perfectly still, your smile carefully empty, feeling the invisible walls tightening around you. That first night stretches endlessly as you kneel alone in the bridal chamber for hours, watching candlelight fade into darkness, shadows crawling across the walls like reaching hands, until finally the door slides open and your husband enters. But nothing changes, because he does not speak, does not look at your face, carrying with him the scent of sake and smoke from distant battlefields, his hands rough and unyielding, offering no questions, no hesitation, as you fix your eyes on the ceiling beams and count the lines in the wood, retreating into silence while your body becomes something claimed rather than shared. When it is over, he leaves without a word, without even turning back, and you do not cry, because tears belong to those who still believe they matter. And by morning, the blood-stained sheets are quietly replaced by a servant who asks no questions. And in that silence, you learn the truth of your new life. This is not a marriage, but an exchange, where he offers protection and status. And you are expected to provide heirs and obedience, while love remains a luxury reserved for those beneath your station. At 15, your first pregnancy ends in blood before it can become life. At 16, you give birth to a son who lives only 3 days, his perfect form fading into stillness, and the cold disappointment of your mother-in-law cuts deeper than any blade. While your husband grows more distant, his presence shorter, his silence heavier, because you have failed at the one role that defines your existence. The years blur together into a relentless cycle of fragile hope and quiet devastation. 17, 18, 19. Each pregnancy announced with cautious anticipation, each ending in loss, in silence, in small, lifeless bodies that never truly belong to this world, until you stop counting after the 5th, and your mother-in-law stops pretending to care after the 7th, while your husband turns elsewhere, taking a concubine, a merchant's daughter chosen for her body rather than her presence. Yet even she cannot give him what he wants, a small, bitter comfort you cling to in the darkness. By the age of 25, the whispers have hardened into certainty. You are labeled cursed, barren, broken, a failure not just as a wife, but as a woman. And you endure it all in silence, kneeling through accusations, swallowing bitter herbs, praying in temples, submitting to rituals and chants from monks who claim to drive out unseen forces, yet nothing changes. And slowly, quietly, you begin to believe them. And if this story pulled you in, if you felt even a fraction of what this life was like, then pause for a moment. Leave a comment with your thoughts and subscribe, because the next part only gets darker, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Meanwhile, the chaos of war churns endlessly beyond your walls, and while your husband rides out 3, sometimes 4 times a year to chase honor on distant battlefields, you remain behind to govern everything he leaves in his absence, managing 50 servants, overseeing supplies, settling disputes, collecting taxes, carrying the weight of an entire household that never truly belongs to you. And when raiders test your defenses, expecting weakness, you stand atop the walls in borrowed armor, with a naginata gripped tightly in your hands, watching them hesitate, then retreat, because what they find is not fear, but a woman who has already lost too much to be afraid. News reaches you that Yuki is dead, taken by childbirth, your only friend erased from the world, and yet you are not allowed to mourn. Not publicly, not visibly, because there is too much to maintain, too many eyes watching, so that night you sit alone in the garden and let your grief pour out in silence until dawn. And when the sun rises, you wipe your tears, paint your face, and become the perfect wife once again. At 27, a pregnancy that nearly kills you finally brings life into the world after 40 hours of agony and blood loss. So severe the midwife calls for a priest. But when the pain finally breaks, it is not your voice that fills the room, but the fragile cry of a child, a daughter, and you name her Hana, because she is a flower that somehow bloomed from soil soaked in your suffering. Though your mother-in-law spits at the news and your husband stays away for a month, yet for you, something changes, something opens, because for the first time in your life, you feel love stronger than fear. At 29, another pregnancy ends in silence. At 31, you finally give birth to a son, and for a brief moment it seems everything might change as your mother-in-law weeps with joy, already imagining his future, his strength, his legacy. But 11 days later, fever takes him, and you watch as she clutches his tiny, lifeless body, rocking back and forth, breaking into a grief so raw it strips away everything she once was. And from that moment, she begins to fade, refusing food, refusing words, retreating into a quiet collapse that ends before winter, leaving behind only bitterness and curses aimed at you and your body. You do not mourn her passing. Instead, you inherit her place, her armor, her silence. While Hana grows, not only surviving but thriving, and into her you pour everything that was denied to you, every dream buried under duty, beginning her training in secret at the age of 6, teaching her not only grace and ceremony, but how to wield a blade, how to strike, how to survive. Because when she asks why she must learn such things, you kneel before her and tell her the truth, that one day danger may come, and you will not always be there to stand in its path. She grows into a beauty that draws attention, too much attention, and by the age of 12, proposals begin to arrive like circling vultures, powerful families offering alliances, your husband seeing advantage, opportunity, a chance to strengthen his position, but for the first time in your life, you resist, pushing back against a fate you know too well, insisting she is too young, that her health is fragile, because you can already see it happening. Your daughter being led into the same gilded cage that once closed around you. You tell them she needs more training, and the excuses begin to stack like sandbags against an unstoppable flood. But your husband is not a man easily deceived, and suspicion soon turns to anger, then to violence, until one night his hand strikes your face with a force that echoes louder than any words, and you do what you have been trained to do. You bow, you apologize, you survive, and the next morning you return to Hannah and calmly continue her lessons, showing her exactly where to strike if a man ever raises his hand against her. Outside your walls, the war begins to shift. Battles are lost, alliances crumble, and when your husband returns from campaign, he is no longer the same man, harder, quieter, drowning himself in sake until he can barely stand, while whispers begin to spread that he has lost the favor of his lord. That disgrace is coming, and then on a cold winter morning in 1570, the messenger arrives with news that seals his fate. His final battle ended not in glory but in retreat, a shame worse than death, and the verdict is absolute. Seppuku, ritual suicide, the only way to restore honor before it drags the entire clan into ruin. You watch him prepare in the same room where he never once spoke of love, and now, for the first and only time, his voice softens as he tells you to take care of Hannah. And then, with a calmness that feels almost unreal, he opens his own body while another ends his life. And just like that, you become a widow at 42, expected by tradition to follow him into death, to bind your knees, take the kaikan, and cut your own throat to preserve what little honor remains. But your hands tremble as you see Hannah standing in the doorway, only 15. And in that moment, you choose something unthinkable. You choose to live, to accept disgrace rather than abandon her to a world that would devour her. And for that choice, the clan never forgives you, forcing you into a second marriage with a minor retainer who values your ability to manage a household more than your lineage, reducing your life from castle halls to a modest cottage, from noble lady to quiet survivor. Yet through all of it, Hannah lives, and that is a price you are willing to pay. Years pass, and by the 8th day of the 10th month in 1578, the final storm arrives, enemy banners filling the horizon as 20,000 soldiers surround the refuge, where you and 200 women and children have gathered, the men long dead or scattered, no reinforcements coming, no hope remaining, only the knowledge of what awaits if the walls fall, capture, violation, slavery, or worse. And Hannah, now 23 and never married because war consumed every future, stands beside you in her grandmother's armor, with your naginata in her hands. And when she speaks, her voice is steady, certain. She already knows what must be done, because you taught her, you prepared her, you just never wanted this lesson to be real. Together you guide the others, showing them how to bind their ankles, where to cut, how to hold their daughters steady. 200 souls facing the same impossible choice. And when the cannons fall silent at dusk, you and Hannah kneel across from each other in the inner chamber, her hands calm, her posture perfect. And in that final moment, you see her entire life at once. The child who laughed in secret training, the woman who stood beside you on the walls, the future she deserved but will never have. And as she whispers that you taught her to be strong, you answer that you taught her to survive, even though this is where survival ends. Together you raise the blade, and when enemy soldiers finally break through at midnight, they find only silence, rows of still bodies arranged with dignity untouched. And in the inner chamber, A mother and daughter facing each other, hands still intertwined, their expressions at peace as if the world never broke them at all. And if you thought surviving life inside a samurai household was brutal, just wait until you see what it took to forge the weapons that built that world, because the next story will take you into the fire, into the hands of those who shaped steel itself. Your life as a samurai swordsmith, where every blade is born from heat, debt, and blood,